Pagoo Chapter 8 Around Snail Cousin's Rock. These are limpets up here at the top. They're really interesting. And those are abalones. Those are some more limpets down there. So let's find out about Snail Cousin's Rock. Pagoo's penthouse rocked and reeled, and the angry landlady waddled away from the big crab. As for the big crab, he knew she had been eating muscle meat. Did she have more? Well, he'd sure find it, or he'd eat her. He rushed up and toppled traveling towers with one claw. He poked, he pried, and got nothing. All doors were locked. He scuttled away in disgust. When certain that the bandit had gone, the landlady pried her apartments upright again. Nearby, Pagoo saw a big shell like a ear clamped to the rock. This univalve had a row of holes which spouted small currents of water, so some animal lived and breathed and fed under that shell. Pagoo drew back at this abalone, began gliding away on a broad black foot. Pagoo had watched the mussel's foot spin cables to anchor it, but this thick abalone's foot was an anchor all in itself. It gripped with powerful suction. An abalone is hard to pry loose when it decides to put its foot down. Now the creature slid away on the rock like a crawling snail. A snail's pace is natural for an abalone, the snail's first cousin. This rock was an old family homestead for many snail relatives. They stuck around all over the place. When these bumps on Snail Cousin's Rock didn't move, Pagoo went to sleep. Most of the bumps were limpets, univalves like the abalone. Some shells looked like fancy oval buttons painted with stripes and spots. Others had holes on top like volcanoes. Most limpets stay home during low tide. At high tide, they glide over their rocks to scrape up tiny plants with raspy tongues. They always return to home base, a neat scar, the exact size and oval shape of the owner. No other limpet will ever camp on that spot. Each finds its own scar and settles down, a mere bump on a rock. Teetering up Snail Cousin's Rock, the landlady jerked to a wobbly stop that awakened Pagoo. He watched waves bubbling far above him. He looked below at a tangle of kelp washing in, dragging its boulder anchor. The landlady fumbled with this algae plant till she found its long stem. Then she went into her waddle on this floating highway. Pagoo was lulled into a gentle snooze once more, and again was jerked awake. This time he bonged about in this roomy barnacle like a clapper in a bell. Traveling Towers was thumping along like among little balloons, air floats looking like green plumes. These floats lift and hold their long kelp plants upright in the sea, but this one was just about wrecked. The landlady bumped, balloon to balloon, and each bump banged Pagoo. He felt better when she reached smooth, leaf-like blades. On a kelp bridge arching above Snail Cousin's Rock, Traveling Towers, dragged to a stop, carrying a full apartment building, had made the landlady hungry. She began plucking some food. The no more bumps jolted Pagoo wide awake. He popped from his doorway and peered down. She was eating again good. He waited, but not one meat particle floated up to him. So there were drawbacks to living in Traveling Towers. Stuck up way up here, he couldn't go places on his own. He climbed down, but a fish shell below sent him right back up. Glumly, he battered his feelers. Nothing but common old sea soup again. From time to time, Pagoo swung an eye at the kelp streamers below. He saw several snail relations not stuck to the rock. A sea slug was Snail Cousin with no shell at all. Pagoo's eyes fairly spun when one slid past a nearby kelp blade. This nudibranch was a dazzling creature, bright and frilly. This nudibranch could crawl or swim, a 3-inch sample of fancy silk ribbon. It flowed or flurried along. Snails built themselves gay-colored shells. This nudibranch spent her energy on gorgeous clothes. Like a drowsy rabbit, a huge snail relative nibbled kelp. 2 curled feelers like rabbit ears gave the sea hare its name. This smooth, sluggish animal wore no outer shell, as it breathed wing-like rufflers. I see all kinds of more snails. So here are the limpets. And those are the little bubbles that keep the kelp going. Here are some actual snails. On its back, flipped gently or folded into a spout. Though its size was amazing, Pagoo felt safe near the eyeless giant. It seemed quite defenseless, yet it could discourage any enemy by squirting a cloud of purple fluid around it. Ugh, distasteful. No animal would care to stop sea hares from growing once they have started. This one might grow to a bulky 16 pounds, and it would lay millions and millions of eggs. Luckily, many animals do eat the eggs of sea hares. Otherwise, in a few years, the world's oceans would be packed as solid as a can of sardines with these soft snail cousins. The snails with shells were feeding everywhere, and Pagoo heard, "Son, you've got a tail-length feeling that a snail shell should be your home, and you're right. Even the landlady's smooth turban shell was made by a snail. Now look around. You're at the live ones." Each snail was gazing, scraping off algae growth from its radula. This tongue moved like a strap pulled forward and back. With the radula pressed down, the sharp-edged blades, like the teeth of a file, rasped the algae food from rock and reed. Pagoo saw only the shells of the snails, rounded, smooth, and shiny shells, sharply pronged and pointed shells, shells long and slender, short and fat, shells like olive cones and fancy buttons, spinning tops and raha turbans. And they came in all sizes. But could he leap down, yank a snail from its shell, and take over? That wise character instinct seemed to say, it isn't being done. Hermits long ago found it too much trouble to pull out a living snail. It sticks to its house like a barnacle, but snails finally die, and other creatures clean their shells out, spick and span. Someday you'll find heaps of empty shells. All of a sudden, Pagoo found about shells. Something terrible happened to Traveling Tower. The landlady on the main floor, the 5 pink concrete towers crowded with barnacles, even little Pagoo, hiding his pentacles, were all swallowed. Uh-oh. Well, we're only on chapter 8, and there's 20 chapters. I'm not too worried. Pagoo, chapter 8.